السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أصحاب السادة والسعادة والمعالي، أشكركم على كلكم للحضور هنا وتشاركون اليوم في ملتقى الأمن السبراني. الآن سوف أخذ الفرصة أن أتحدث معكم عن آلية التمكين والتشريع في الحوكمة في الأمن السبراني من أجل سلامة وحماية للمؤسسات الحكومية والخاصة في جميع القطاعات المتواجدة. حديثي اليوم والعرض سوف يكون بالتقديم باللغة الإنجليزية، فأتمنى أن تشاركونني وتتابعوا معي وتترقبوا ما بي أمامكم الآن. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Cybersecurity has been a never-ending concept that has been growing over the past years. We have seen the endless attacks targeting a variety of ranging government entities, large-scale organizations in various industries, and it's not showing any slowing down. The pace has been increasing. The attack vectors we have been seeing have been far more technical and detailed, and the threats are continuously rising. Thus, we develop the knowledge and capabilities that will allow us to govern what happens within our industries, following the frameworks and underlinings, policies and procedures set by the governing policies reliant on the cybersecurity governance policy. So, for today's agenda, we'll be following through the following procedure. We'll be looking at the various cybersecurity threats, trends, statistics, figures, what to expect in the next coming years, how this affects each organization's infrastructure as an organization continuously expands and grows. Following that, we will be looking at how to establish a cybersecurity governance policy. What are the key metrics that we are going to be utilizing on and relying on in developing this fundamental policy? We will be adjusting on that and be assessing the advantages of implementing such a strategy on your organization. And hopefully we will be able to conclude with some meaningful context that will allow you to go on and move further and develop such a strategy that will be implemented within your organization. So, as I mentioned, the discussion starts off by defining what is cybersecurity, how its capabilities are, what are the relevant threats we are seeing up to date. And it's quite simple. Cybersecurity in its simplest terms is defined as what we are protecting in terms of an IT infrastructure, whether it is mobile devices, endpoint devices, network appliances, so on and so forth. These things are being monitored constantly and are being connected to the internet. Regardless of this, we assume trust to whoever we're communicating with. There is multiple risks associated with this, defined differently. So, here are some of the things we have been looking at over the past couple of years, what's happening right now in our current stage of time, and what to expect in the coming future. There's a variety of things to see and to expect. Ransomware has been a continuous topic that's been talked amongst the industry and is never ending. In this year itself, in the past quarter of 2021 as well, the discussion has been regarding the developments within malware itself and how it's been advancing. New technologies, new methods, new tactics have been implemented such that they can infiltrate your organization. Defining trust is a key concept within cybersecurity that's been utilized by the attackers to go forward and gain further action from the end users. Your employees, your staff, your friends, you assume everybody you will come in contact with online is who they say they are. But in the reality, it is not the case. We start to understand that these cybersecurity governance policies and procedures and these policies that are being implemented by the government itself forces organizations to put a larger scale spending on their cybersecurity infrastructure, policies, procedures, and cyber defense mechanisms. This intact is quite obvious. A large number of the statistics you'll be able to see identify that as so. We have seen a larger increase, an exponential increase and ransomware attacks across the globe. Spam, malware has been spread out across organizations with the abuse of trust. Governance policies implemented by organizations, by the governments, have been leading governments and entities into spending much more money into the infrastructure, the cybersecurity defense. Nevertheless, these numbers, these facts, these figures might seem scary at now, but by developing a strategic method, by implementing a policy, you'll be able to reduce, mitigate these risks, and hopefully build the strong foundations to implement a strategic security policy. So, where next? Simply defining what's been going on in the past couple of years, understanding the terminology and understanding what an advanced persistent threat is. In its simplest terms, an advanced persistent threat group is a group of individuals, normally motivated by financial gain, information gain, disrupting operations and organizations and government entities, normally funded by governments to target other governments as well. These APT groups normally utilize a specific strategy and technique using the latest technologies available. They are the frontier leading groups that establish what is happening within the cybersecurity realm. They're always the talk of the town. They're always causing the biggest mess. And that's why it's kind of scary. But thankfully, there is some sort of framework that has shed a light onto these APT groups, the MITRE framework. With sponsorship from the US government and a lot of US agencies, they established a very sophisticated framework that enables organizations to understand the ongoing threats and risks targeting the cybersecurity realm and what to potentially mitigate these risks. So, some examples of an APT groups that were established and seen across the years starts off with the Equation. Equation is one of the APT groups within the US that's been developing ransomware for the past couple of years, and they were one of the leading reasons for infiltrating the NSA and uncovering the mass information leak or spyware that was being implemented within the US. Not only that, you have APT-28, a Russian organization that mainly targets the NATO. More so, they provide a new service, exploitation, hacking as a service. You'll be able to access through the dark web, pay a fee with the Bitcoin, and from there on, you can easily target any organization you want. Nevertheless, recently, Hoffenheim, a Chinese-based group targeting the exchange servers. They were able to mainly focus their targets on the US, infiltrating military organizations, focusing on government organizations with the hopes of leaking critical information within the US infrastructure. So we understand now the risks, we understand the threats. In order to understand why this lies within your organization, we are required to understand the infrastructure within this organization. We are continuously being introduced to newer technologies, whether it is hardware or software. We are continuously expanding by implementing these softwares into our technologies. So let's look at this as an example. We initially start as a small organization. Our capabilities are very limited. We have a few servers in place, a couple of employees, staff working in-house. And sooner rather than later, as you progress, you start to recognize that we are expanding our operations. More staff, more software, more technologies, more people, more access into the internet. Sooner or later, your organization starts to grow locally, nationally, internationally, and you're continuously faced with newer threats. People are always going to be using your services, and you're supposed to assume trust to these people. Regardless of that, this creates a very sophisticated infrastructure to manage, to monitor, to track, to ensure cybersecurity governance is followed. So at its earliest stages, such a policy should be introduced to mitigate the risk, to make it easy to have metrics in place to follow continuously with the growth of the company to ensure the cybersecurity needs are met with your stakeholders. So, now that we understand the risks, the threats, how this all ties in with cybersecurity governance is the key. Each organization utilizes a different policy, a different strategy, a different outcome based on the stakeholder, shareholder needs and which industry they work on. In its simplest terms, cybersecurity governance is the process of following and adhering to the processes, procedures, in line with the vision and mission of the organization to ensure continuity, availability, integrity. So, we can move on here and discuss the main principles. In order to establish a strong wall, a strong mechanism for cybersecurity defense, you're enabled to establish the main concrete foundation to enable such a wall to handle this risk. We have developed some sort of ideology, some sort of diagram that you can need to understand to filter down to reach to the point of cybersecurity principles in governance. Previously, we've looked at the ideas, the risks, the current trends within cybersecurity, how we can tackle them as a whole. The culture within our organization differs from one another. We are faced with different processes and different strategies that are in line to meet our shareholder goals. Nevertheless, being aware of the APT targets as an example to use a case study to build on your organization to be understanding and able to underline the risks that are targeting your organization is quite key. Using pre-existing frameworks available, whether it's open source or relying with other governing organizations. You can possibly use the ISO 12007 as an example for information security. Being understanding and know how to enable these kind of topics enables you to build a strong foundation to build your cybersecurity defense system upon. So, having these ideas being in place, how can we take this forward? How can an organization build upon this to develop their own strategic cybersecurity governance policy? Well, at the initial stage, it's key to meet with your initial stakeholders, the people that are continuously using your systems, continuously operating around it. Following that, we're able to develop and manage a cybersecurity transformation strategy. This is, in its simplest terms, allows us to use the stakeholder needs, use cases, and understand the cybersecurity alignment that is required to be met. So, we define our cybersecurity structure. We understand our infrastructure, we understand our network, we understand where the risks lie, and we build upon that. We try and mitigate the risk. Using key metrics, we are able to justify the action that we have taken has been either propelled into the right direction or we have simply failed. Then comes to the next point. We just looked at our key metrics. Now it's time to justify, is it working or not? We revert back to our cybersecurity optimization, ensure that our systems, our procedures are in line and in check with our stakeholder needs, and if so, we continuously monitor, see how it goes. Does it meet our expectations? Are we seeing any improvements? Are we seeing any growth? Are we more resilient to attacks? And if not, with this agile methodology, we're able to go back and start over again. We revert back to the management of our cybersecurity transformation strategy and move backwards. And we keep rinse and repeating the cycle to ensure the effectiveness of the cybersecurity governance policy. So, we briefly stated the key metrics, what we need to follow, how do we develop such a strategy. In simpler terms, we can look at an organization that has successfully implemented such a policy and procedure that lead to further financial gains, security gains, trustworthy within other stakeholders, so on and so forth. It's very simple. These cybersecurity governance policies are implemented for a reason. We are living in a day and age where this risk is continuously there, and we need to effectively manage and take actionable, we need to take action with regards to what occurs on a day-to-day basis. Cybersecurity is very dynamic, and it doesn't stay the same. We're continuously introduced to newer technologies with the upcoming and rising use of AI and AOT. Sooner rather than later, we'll be introduced to blockchain and its counterparts as well. So, I urge everybody to take this into consideration and not think about it in such a way that this is scary. Cybersecurity pushes us forward to make sure everybody's safety is met. Some people see cybersecurity as some sort of obstacle to your daily lives. But from my perspective, I think it's a necessity. It's an important right for everybody to know that they are browsing the internet safely in a secured environment without the worry that their information or their safety is at compromise. So, I hope everybody was able to learn something meaningful about cybersecurity governance, was able to gain some insightful information, facts, and figures about what is happening in the world right now. From here, I hope we take a step forward. We work together and ensure Oman as a whole is cybersecurity ready at any time, any place. Thank you very much for your time. You're welcome.